being erotically powerful was very much a part of being a male leader. And I also feel that we don't sexualize women in power. We've often degraded them.
Yeah, and you can be powerful if you remain frozen.
So how do we move through this shadow?
To me, that's real empowerment. It's not a mindset. It's not a mental orientation. It's an embodied experience of relationship with the body. To lead where the whole body is online, where our energy is flowing and moving, and where we're moving from a place of potency. Try to cut me down.
Welcome to This Tantric Life. Today, we're going to be talking with Nisha Moodley. We're going to explore why eroticism is the key to truly empowered female leadership. We're also going to walk you through that sense of how you can put down being hypervigilant. I've been there so much in my life. It's like tight, tense, afraid, looking out for the next disaster, paying attention to everything all the time. It's totally exhausting. Me and Nisha are going to unpack how you can build sanctuaries and spaces to actually relax, to actually let your nervous system soothe and soften. And we're also going to talk about Nisha's journey into being sexually re-empowered in midlife. She gives one of the most exquisite articulations, is a volcano of opportunity for not only orgasms and the best sex ever, but also for changing culture. So let's go. I can't wait for you to experience this conversation. Nisha is the founder of the Center for Devotional Leadership and Global Sisterhood Day. She's been coaching and leading for over 18 years. She's taught 65 live retreats. And to me, she is one of the women who is truly inviting the next phase of female leadership on this planet through integrity, through actual authentic power, and through working with and not over. Welcome, Nisha.
Layla, I'm so happy to be here.
So I'm surprising you with this, which you don't know about this, but I'm holding a computer here because I want you all to come with me into 2014. So we are still emerging out of the Great Recession. Obama is president.
Oh, what a time.
And the internet still feels fairly new. And putting yourself out there on the internet is still a fairly novel idea. And I have recently come back from almost 10 years living in Asia on and off and moved to New York City. I knew almost no one. And I experienced you online. And I was like, holy shit, who is this woman of so much style and artistry and truth and values and integrity in what she's sharing with the world? Like, I remember my jaw nearly dropping on the floor. And I was like, I must declare my love.
Oh my goodness.
So I want you all listening to this to imagine late 20-something Layla, just like all starry-eyed. And I was just starting to put my work online. So I was very much like, oh. And I wrote you this email, which I have uncovered from the bowels of my Gmail.
I'm so excited.
On February 8th, 2014. And the subject is my first online love declaration. I write, Dear Nisha, this is a first for me. I have never declared an unabashed online girl crush on anyone before. I've been silent up until now because given all of our mutual friends, I know that we will someday meet, and I am much more assured of my charm in person than I am in email. However, I've got no real sense of how soon or far away that meeting is. And I find myself writing you adorational material in my head as I walk the streets of New York City. I arrived just as you were leaving, and talking to you in my head and writing this email started to be a drag because my love for you wanted to live. So here it is. You are an absolute gem of a human being, and I consider myself of pretty high tastes and standards. And your writing consistently bowls me over, melts any pretense hanging around in my being, and keeps me in awe of your grace. It's a huge thing to be graceful and exquisite on the internet. I love what you are doing, your message, and your obvious success. I don't look up to many people, but I find myself inspired by you. So, Nisha, this is my first online declaration of love. I am actually blushing and smiling. So thank you for the opportunity to allow me to feel coy. When we meet in person, I hope my reaching out by email sweetens the encounter and doesn't detract. I also, didn't want to feel creepy because I'm about the farthest thing from creepy in person. You just never know how something is going to sound to someone you don't actually know. Thank you for raising the bar and being awesome. Much love, Layla Martin.
Oh my goodness. Remember this email.
And I'm going to invite you to read your response.
Oh Lord, I hope I was as beautiful as you were. Layla Love. Look at my old logo. Layla Love. Thank you for this email. I'm sorry it's taken me so long to get back to you. If anybody emails, you will get that line. 3 reasons. I was traveling when you sent it. I actually cried and read parts of it aloud anonymously to my guy. I was so touched, so grateful. Number 2, I am bad at email. I just ... take ... forever ... to ... reply. I have spent several years promising I'd get better at it, but so far the best thing is to just admit I suck at email. And 3, it is so hard to find words that feel sufficient in response to this gorgeous outpouring of love. So here I am, doing my best. Seriously, truly, this is perhaps the best email I've ever received. I so appreciate your coyness, your gratitude, your willingness to share it all. Thank you, dear sister. It all means so much. I can't wait to meet you one day soon. In the meantime, can we at least be Facebook friends?
That was back when being Facebook friends meant something and wasn't like, I actually don't want to be friends.
I'm here. Hyperlink. And what's happening in your world? Love, Nisha.
To which I responded,
Oh,
there's more. Hi, Nisha. So happy to receive your response! ! I figured you either hadn't read it, just hadn't gotten back to me, or were totally appalled by the email and wouldn't be speaking to me ever again. I'm super happy it was number 2. My world ? I live in the East Village with my Australian boyfriend. I came to New York 7 months ago after living in the Asian jungles on and off for 10 years because I was chasing a spiritual death of sorts and realized how much I wanted to live. If I was learning before through the language of spiritual practice, now I'm learning through the language of money, success, and red lipstick. It's a surprisingly similar journey. The new dominant question is, how can I thrive? I do weird things like fall in love with my local gym. I never saw that coming because my gym feels like Alice in Wonderland did LSD and invited all of the gay men and strippers to the party of disco balls and Stairmasters. And it's probably my favorite place to be when it's freezing ass cold outside. This is a gym that like originally was started by gay men and like was like a stomping ground, but then they opened it to everyone and they had disco balls and that. And I was like, whoa. I also sit at home a lot and stare at my computer and miss the crashing waves of the ocean and the awesomely present feeling I would get walking home barefoot in the jungle in pitch dark when I lived in Thailand. I feel at times so elated and in touch with beauty, and at times like the ball of sadness in my belly might never go away. New York has been super, super good to me. I love my work and I love people, and I love being challenged by unabashedly giving my gifts and myself to the world. Whenever I wonder about my choices or struggle, I think, remember you chose to be here because you wanted more than anything else to live. So do it. That's my world right now. Thank you for asking. Love, Layla. And you wrote back.
Simply said, crush equals mutual. Love, Nisha. And so it began.
And so it began.
Wow. let this be known in this moment. I'm like, we never know 11 years from now where we might be. And also 11 years ago, we were cool. My story in my head about my 11-year ago self is that she was like, and, um, and actually I read those things and I'm like, you've always been you and I've always been me and you were always exquisite and I was always exquisite. And I also know like the train wrecks that were occurring in our lives at that time, but also the beauty, but also the wisdom and the grace and like, ugh, so grateful. Friendship. Ah.
And one of the reasons I wanted to read that for you listening is you never know what might happen when you take that chance, right? I wrote you that email. I gave it a try and I was truly willing to never get a response or be shot down or have you be one of those people who had some internet fame and was like, I'm far too good for this person or whatever it was. And I was really carrying all that fear and I did it anyways. And there was obviously so much beauty that got to unfold between us as a result.
Yeah.
And to tie this in to the topic we're going to talk about today is you really guide women specifically on leadership.
Yeah.
How to lead business, how to lead in life, what leadership is.
Yeah.
Right. And this way when we choose to lead ourselves in our lives is a lot about what choices do I make? What risks do I take? How do I live in alignment with my values? And what else do you see goes into leadership and why is it so important?
Well, I think that in order to explore anything, we have to explore what we load into it. And there are some things like leadership that we already come with our own baggage around it, whether we know it or not. We have our own story around it, whether we know it or not. And so, as much as I'm interested in our becoming, I think part of our becoming is our deconditioning. So, what I love to have people do as we start exploring together, or as we come into each other's fields in whatever way, is an exploration of what do I have already in my mind, in my heart, in my field of projection that is a leader, and what is leadership. And what I've found for folks is that often when they project leader in their mind, they are either like, ooh, I would never want to be like that. So whatever they project, they're like, ooh, they recoil. Or they're like, wow, I could never be like that. Like, that's so amazing. So it's so amazing. And then a little like, maybe I couldn't be that amazing. Or it's so hideous and I don't want any part of it. And so I think that shows us that there's a distortion around what leadership actually is, which makes all the sense in the world because, we have been told that the ones who wield power over are the leaders instead of this more integrated, everyone included, each in our own gifts way of leadership. And so when I think about leadership and a paradigm that we could move into around leadership that is life-giving, that is truly collectively empowering, I think about us orienting ourselves first to the most beautiful vision or version of the world that we can imagine, trusting that there are innate gifts, ancestral gifts, perfectly designed traumas, perfectly woven life experiences that allow us to contribute to that world in unique ways. Yes, perhaps through the lens of our work, but also just in our expression, in our beingness. And then what are the conditions that we can create individually, communally, collectively to most allow those gifts to flow forward? And that means what are the conditions that provide space for honesty, for reclamation, for healing? I think about the spaces that you create and hold, these spaces where we can come into a fuller, deeper, wider embodiment of our gifts by coming home to ourselves.
Mm.
So that's a little bit of the lensing and framing that I come into leadership with, or conversations around leadership.
Mm.
Mhm.
All right, we're going to pause for just a moment, and I'm going to invite you to join my email list. You might be like, email, but honestly, email is where I share my deepest teachings, my most personal stories, and my most outrageously good content. It's also where you can stay connected to all of the podcasts that I release and my programs where you can train more deeply with me. So if you want to join, head over to laylamartin.com and sign up with your best email address. So I'd love for us all to take a moment to consider, what are those conditioned stories that we carry around leadership.
Mhm.
I know for me, it was at first just the erasure of female leadership, period.
Yeah.
Like, women aren't even really leaders. And I don't know why our brain does this, but rather than thinking of the best example of something, we tend to look at the worst example.
Yeah.
So leaders are, soulless capitalists. They have to lie and cheat to get ahead. They're only driven by a hunger for money and power. I really felt that for a long period of time and denied my own leadership as a result, rather than saying leadership is an opportunity. If I allow myself to step into that, what do I want to fill it with?
Yeah.
And another piece of this shadow that I think is so important that we want to talk about today is Eros in female leadership. Because in many ways, being erotically powerful was very much a part of being a male leader. If you're a successful general or warrior, people tend to assume and associate that with some kind of sexual power.
Yeah.
And they tend to assume that people are going to want to have sex with you if you're a man, because you have military power or skill and talent or leadership abilities.
Yeah.
And we also tend to sexualize men in leadership.
Yeah.
Whether that's biological, whether that's social, right? Like, his capacity to lead many people, like, that's sexy.
Yeah. Even if it's a wielding of power as force,
Yeah.
as domination in a domination suppression dynamic.
Yes. And I feel that one of the ways that we suppressed female leadership and power was a strong conditioning that should you have erotic power, you get to belong to a class of mistresses or whores. And you only have power by virtue of almost always the man who wants to have sex with you.
Yeah.
But you don't get any other kind of real power in society. And you don't get to be a wife, and you certainly don't get to be any kind of other leader. And right now, as I've looked at it in society, I feel the one area where women get to own their eros and have power is when they're artists. So if you're a singer or an actress, right, you get to be in your eros because that is part of the magnetism of a singer or an actress. But especially up until a few years ago, and I think it's just starting to change now, if you wanted to be a politician or a CEO, I have felt that the assumption is that you better check your erotic power at the door and wear pantsuits or, and that can be erotic for some people, but for many people, that's a checking of what I would usually wear to feel sexy at the door. It's a checking of a surrendered, sensual way of being. And I also feel that we don't sexualize women in power. We've often degraded them. We've often judged them and been very harsh on them, right? And there's, attacking women for how they look, attacking women for how they sound, right? It's not like wow, what a sexy bitch. Like she had the courage, she had the ovary, she had the vivaciousness
Mm,
to go and stand on stage
mm,
and lead in this way. And even if she lost, wow, this heroicism that we afford men sometimes,
mm.
it's like, no.
Yeah.
And not only that, but usually there's a kind of sexual degrading that can happen that goes along with that. So, one of the things that's so fascinating that I wanted to talk to you about is this emergent experience for those of us who maintain our eros
Mm,
and also lead,
mm,
and what that union feels like, how you actually can harness your eros
mm,
and feel like I think most women want to feel,
mm.
which is I'm still in touch with my sensual erotic nature. Like, can you imagine saying to a man, I want you to be a warrior or a leader, but you must not feel erotically powerful?
Right.
They'd be like, what? But I feel like somehow that is the unspoken bargain that
Yeah.
was handed to a lot of women. And I think that's where a lot of this, like being a female leader, being a female CEO is masculine and it will burn you out and it's exhausting.
Yeah. And you can be powerful if you remain frozen.
Yes.
That's the bargain.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, how do we move through this shadow? And how do you see women moving through this shadow to reclaim? And what do they see on the other side if and when they allow their eros?
Okay. So I'm going to take us back to a time in my life. When I started my business, my first business, which has morphed and iterated over the years naturally as it's become what it is, I started originally working with women around, I studied nutrition and went the path of food psychology.
Mm.
And I started working with women around overeating and compulsive eating because that had been my path. And the way that we did it is that there was absolutely no restriction. So usually they were coming in already very restricted and like, it's not working. Briefly, I will say one of my a very memorable client I had been in Overeaters Anonymous for years. And she came to me because she was like, the list of trigger foods is so long now. And last night I technically added green beans to it
Mm.
because I ate an entire bag of frozen green beans in a totally numbed out state. And
Mm.
so this is not working. And I said, okay, we're going to start here. There is no more list of trigger foods. You're allowed to eat whatever you want. But I have 3 rules. Number 1 is that when the food is in front of you, you just imagine it being grown. You imagine it in its natural, original state,
Mm.
just for a moment. There's
Mm.
no perfect way to do that. Number 2, you just create the conditions for yourself to eat without distraction.
Mm.
So not with the TV, maybe not even in a conversation for a while.
Mm.
Maybe you sit at the table with your family while they eat and then you go and have a moment with yourself, but you create the conditions to eat without a bunch of distraction. And the third is you just savor it.
Mm.
Whatever you're eating, you like really taste it, which by the way, handles slowness. I don't have to say chew each bite 30 times, saying savor it,
Mm.
which is essentially really be in, I'm not saying this, the erotic experience of communing with this being that
Mm.
is the green bean.
Mm. I'm going to put you in my mouth.
Yeah, food is a portal, by the way, for anyone listening. And I hope this is actually a helpful framing for anyone who struggles with food. And I'm getting somewhere with this because what I would watch every time is that as they actually practiced having this engaged way of eating, where they're just savoring, that's the only goal. And they could eat whatever they want. That naturally, because of the biochemical genius of the body, because of what's actually occurring, because they're actually having an erotic relationship with life, their body, and food, that what was happening is they were like, wait, I'm just not binging anymore.
Mm.
And wait, I actually don't crave the junk food anymore. I was starting to eat it and then it started to taste gross
Mm.
because that's what happens. You start really savoring and then you realize the flavor underneath the top note starts coming out and like, if you're eating crap food, those bottom notes, they're not so delightful, actually. They're not delicious. It's not like a carrot that gets sweeter and sweeter and more dynamic. And it's like, oh, rancid oils,
Yeah.
And so without having to shame or educate or convince them into it, they were experiencing this deep body wisdom that was having them reorient to a truer, embodied, primal yes and no. And so that was all happening. To me, that's real empowerment. It's not a mindset. It's not a mental orientation. It's an embodied experience of relationship with the body. And so that would all happen. And they're like, yay, I'm not a compulsive eater anymore. And then I would watch this really beautiful thing happen, which is their attention, once it got away from this hyper obsession fixation with fixing the body and doing the right thing and being just perfect, which is what we've been conditioned to do, as for those of us socialized as girls and women, is nitpick the shit out of this. What is wrong here? And then if that gets too painful, I'm going to nitpick the shit out of you. What's wrong with you? Oh, she's so, she thinks she's so, why? Oh, she should deal with that. But instead, they were experiencing this embodied empowerment, this deep relationship with self and as nature. And their attention, I was watching woman after woman after woman, hundreds of women be like, I care about this. I want to shift. I want to participate in this. I've always wanted to be a writer. Their attention it was like literally going from the obsession here to the interest and curiosity and participation and engagement with this. And I think that is a beautiful parable for what happens when we actually have embodied leadership, an erotic relationship with life. And what naturally happens is we start shifting it outwards. And what I've seen is that then that thing, that embodied empowerment, changes the way that we speak, the way that we move, the way that we enter space, the way that we orient in space. And so it's no longer this tight-bellied, I know how to perform well. I know the rules of engagement. I've figured out the correct chess moves and now I just have to play them. It is, I'm dropped in. I might actually have the softest or one of the softest, widest bellies in the room. I'm the opposite of holding it in. I'm rooting it down. And there is a potency to the way that a woman speaks and moves from that place. And so how this translates into leading in a space or trying to say a thing on the internet is I'm not competing to get more attention in the noise. I'm not joining the field of the noise. I'm actually penetrating through the noise with a depth and a potency of truth and wisdom. And an energy and a potency of energy into the space as well. And I'm like, I think that's actually what we need to be about. I think that's what we need to be up to.
Yeah.
To lead where the whole body is online, where our energy is flowing and moving, and where we're moving from a place of potency. And in that, try to cut me down. And it's not to say that that can't hurt, that can't harm. The arrows that come won't, hurt. But also that deeper truth, that deeper potency, that deeper wisdom has landed in the hearts and minds and experience of others. And then at least we have the experience of being like, I know I actually gave what I had to give.
So much there.
Yeah.
First of all, yes.
Yes.
Let's take a little pause from the podcast, and I'm going to tell you about my signature 1-year program. This is the VITA Sex, Love, and Relationship Coaching Certification, and it is for you if you have dreamed of giving your gifts as a sex, love, and/or relationship coach with a holistic and spiritual lens. This program starts as a personal deep dive, allowing you to transform your own experience of sex, love, and relating. It then trains you in a profound methodology that allows you to become a confident and masterful coach, and it trains you in business skills so that you can effectively sell your coaching packages to high-end clients in a way that feels heart-centered and filled with soul. If you want to have a lifestyle that you are super excited about, create your own work hours, and have a meaningful impact in the world, go to laylamartin.com/VITA coaching. That's VITA, laylamartin.com/VITA coaching. All right. So this is Sex Magic. This is a supplement from my mood line, and it's designed to make you feel glittery and turned on. You ideally take it 15 minutes before sex, but you can take it before anytime you want to feel amazing. It's got huperzine A and shilajit and sustanche, which is an aphrodisiac flower, and all kinds of other amazing stuff.
I'm very familiar with this tonic.
To our erotic leadership.
To our erotic leadership. And also for everyone at home, like, have a sexy drinking vessel. Even if you just buy one, you don't have to share it with your kids. Just like the one sexy drinking vessel. It really makes a difference.
Although I'm really on brand here with a sexy, well-designed drinking vessel.
It really is.
And then a giant ratchet tumbler.
Range, baby. Range. Actually, on the topic of range, this is the other thing that I see, which is this pendulum swing between, okay, to be a leader, I got to climb into what I've seen the men hold, how I've seen the men wield, what I know, right? No shade to pantsuits. I don't know how people pee in them, but and I need easy access these days in midlife. But I'm gonna suit up and I'm gonna corset myself, whether it's a physical corset or an energetic corset, and I'm gonna, hit all the notes. I'm gonna play the chess well. And I've seen this swing where there's like, no, but feminine leadership. And and the narrative around that sometimes being this like leaned back, soft and sweet, so sweet and nice and soft and gentle and I have a real soft, gentle part of me. And I also have a ferocious, fiery, take no shit part of me. And really have had to notice where I have rejected that intensity because I had some internalized narrative of it not being feminine enough, of that being old conditioning. And that actually, if I was really evolved, I would be so soft and so sweet and nice and be like, the face of the goddess is many faces. And she is the one who will wield the sword of truth with so much love and ferocity. And she is the one that will pull the weeping child into her lap with so much space and everything beyond and in between. And I feel like the real evolution in our leadership as women is to embody the most profound range that love is. That love is potency, that it is intensity, that it is things that we might relate to as embodied masculine ways, and that it is softness and width and sweetness and fluidity and things that we might ascribe to embodied range of feminine. And it's the queering of our leadership, the expansive allowance to embody the full range and embrace that in ourselves first, that I think actually makes way for our greatest aliveness and potency.
Mm.
Mm.
Well, I feel the nuance gets very lost sometimes, as happens in human discourse,
Yeah.
which is women deserve to be protected by their culture.
Yes.
That is traditional, and that is how humans are made.
Mm.
That when a woman is pregnant, she is vulnerable and she does deserve to be protected by warriors and sisters and grandmothers. And we long, I believe, on a biological level, I can feel it in myself, for a society that prioritizes the protection of women,
Mm-hmm.
but not as an excuse to repress them. However, I feel like when we fetishize what it means to be feminine, we're unconsciously fetishizing. It's almost like a courtesan in a harem. Like you have no real rules and responsibilities. You just get to lounge around on silks and velvets and make love and be fed and, never do the hard housework or the difficulty of raising children. Like it's this fetishization of like, oh, to be feminine is just to be surrendered and be fed all the time. I know I hunger for that state
Yeah.
because hard trauma-based capitalism strips that from us, that true relaxation, that true rest, that true nourishment. And so we're craving it. But I feel like we forget that women in tribes were ferocious. They protected their children from snakes and lions and went out into nature every day foraging, which is an intense experience. They're far closer to warriors and leaders of their families and their tribes and the moment with regards to interfacing with nature, which is no joke.
Super tracking.
Yeah.
That berry is poisonous. This berry is not. What was that rustling in the bush? Where did the baby toddle off to? Yeah.
Yeah. Building homes, building gardens. Like there's a building responsible, work-oriented dimension of being a woman that is feminine as hell.
Yes.
And when we take that away from the nature of being a woman, I feel like we subtly judge and shame ourselves when we are wanting to work, when we are wanting to produce, when we are taking action, as though that's not an alignment with true femininity, when it absolutely is when you look at the natural state of a woman.
There is a way. I think what I hear you speaking to is that we are exhausted from hypervigilance. If I have to fear everything because there's no border of protection anywhere for me, there's no sanctuary to return to. There's no, there's not a culture of nurturance to exist as a part of. And I recognize that I'm actually burning out from hypervigilance, which is a point that many, many women get to of like, I actually can't, my body has stopped sustaining hypervigilance. Or we recognize in some other way that that isn't that's a dead end road. Exactly what you're saying. We can fetishize this sense of what is opposite of hypervigilance, which is I never have to need for anything. I never have to want for anything. I never have to lift a finger. Oh, it'd be so nice to just flow with whatever I feel like doing today with no responsibility.
Yeah.
And to me, the opposite, if you will, of hypervigilance isn't floppiness. It isn't, uh, what is the word? It's not surrender. It's I'll just say floppiness. It's not this sort of floppy.
Being a lady of pure leisure
Yeah.
alone.
It is attunement. It's intentionality. It's the ability to have a relaxed and responsive body at the same time. It's to actually be responsive, response-able. Hypervigilance doesn't actually really allow for responsiveness in a wider, more attuned sense, because hypervigilance is like safe, not safe, good, bad.
Yeah.
And that is not a very attuned or spacious tracking mechanism. It's not very subtle. It's not very nuanced. So I think for all of us, if we can, when we recognize the effects of hypervigilance in our being and in our body, and let ourselves get a little like not pissed off at ourselves for being hypervigilant, but pissed off that we live in overcultures and a world that would ask us to be hypervigilant, that would require us to be hypervigilant, that we've had lived experiences of being the prey to human predators. It's righteous. It's right. It's correct to find the place where we're like, that's not okay. What the hell? And I feel that all the time. I'm like, we're living in like The Onion is gonna, that fake newspaper, The Onion. I'm like, they're gonna go out of business because real news is like The Onion. Like we are living in upside down land. And I can feel the place where I'm like pissed about this. Like, why are we not centering the most vulnerable? It's the most obvious thing to do. Why do we not be like, oh, you're going to have a baby and you just had a baby? Oh, we're going to wrap a community of care around you. Of course, you're not going to have to go to work. Of course, you're not going to have to take care of yourself and a baby and a household at the same time and a dog, throw in a dog and maybe a couple more kids. I get pissed off about that. And that's right. And that's righteous. And so externalizing that, not internalizing that is like, why am I like this? And why can't I time manage better? And why do I still have like around men? And why am I? Instead being like, oh, it's an overculture. I could trace it all the way back to colonization. I could trace it all the way back to the roots of these harms, like the initial impacts of these harms.
What's an overculture?
Well, to me, like, here we are in the United States of America, right? There's an original culture or a myriad of original cultures of this land, cultures that were a people moving in relationship with nature, with unseen and seen beings, in deep relationship with the land and the waters, migrating as needed, right? That is an intact flowing culture. An overculture is like, this is our identity. This is how we behave. The United States as a nation state and a national identity is an overculture. So one that is imposed upon and not kind of flowed up from the roots. And so I can be pissed off about that these impositions and these wounds have occurred. And then I think the question becomes like, how do we orient in a way that actually allows for myself to become a responsive, attuned being instead of a hyper vigilant being? How do I allow myself to come into my truer nature as a woman, which is deeply responsible, deeply caring, deeply passionate, deeply protective, deeply, all of the full range, fiery, powerful, soft. And so we need sanctuary. We need to create pockets of sanctuary. I think every single one of our homes should be a sanctuary.
And can you break down how to do that? Because I think this is really super helpful, right? Like I'm listening and I'm understanding that the actual way to counteract all this hypervigilance, which is exhausting and leads to lots of burnout, is to return to a nature-based underculture.
Emergent culture
of connection and beauty and magnificence where, I am protected by warriors of the heart of all genders,
Mhm.
especially during my times of vulnerability.
Mhm.
And I can trust that. But given that that's probably not the instant fix for most of us, right?
Yeah.
That's probably generations now of us trying to seed that back into
Mhm.
this overculture.
Yeah.
What can I do right now
Yeah.
to soften out of that? So building a sanctuary, and what does that look like?
Well, I think first, when we stop being like, what's wrong with me?
Mm.
And start being like, there's something wrong with how we are doing this.
Yeah.
That externalization is actually really important. It's not to say I'm not responsible for that or I can't contribute to that, but to say the project isn't actually just focusing on fixing me. The project is creating conditions where one wouldn't have to be hypervigilant
Mm.
all the time.
Mm.
And that I can so we first have to recognize it's actually this thing that's really problematic and has created this hypervigilance in my body. And so that we can actually fully own that we deserve to have spaces where we are not where we don't have to be hypervigilant.
Yeah. And I love that because you and I have had a shared practice for a very long time
Mm-hmm.
of making our spaces feel beautiful
Mm-hmm.
and somatically soft.
Yes.
So I'm a collector of soft blankets, bathtubs with
Yeah.
candles, having, beauty.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't always have to be super expensive. It takes a little bit of investment,
Yeah.
but it's a simple yet underrated way
Yeah.
to have your home start to feel like a place where you can set down that hypervigilance. And I know that you and I both come from childhoods where we experienced abuse. So
Yeah.
this hypervigilance was not just the overculture, but also the culture of our childhood homes.
Mm-hmm.
And so to create a space where it's not just physically beautiful, but
Yeah.
it feels like a sanctuary for
Yes.
you to unwind the
Yes.
stress of your nervous system is so important.
Yeah. So we're in relationship with everything,
Mm.
right? This is just a truth, whether we are conscious of those relationships or not, whether we can map what they are or not. We just are in relationship with everything all the time,
Mm.
right? If I sprayed perfume in the corner of the room, it's going to go into your body and it's going to interact with your body in a way that it's interacting. And you don't even have to know that I sprayed it.
And I'm so sensitive.
Yeah, but you
Especially
would
if it's
know.
in any kind of artificial perfume, which I know you would never spray because we're both
No.
hippies. I'm like,
Yeah. So just like my client who let go of the rules but come into engagement,
Mhm.
start noticing, savor it. And through the savoring, you notice like, oh, I don't actually like this
Mm.
thing that I've been eating every single day for 12 years.
Mm.
Or like, ooh, this is actually quite, this. So we can do that all over the place. So the first thing that I would say to people is if we know I deserve sanctuary, everyone deserves sanctuary. And I, as a woman, deserve to have a space in the world where I do not have to be hypervigilant. And God damn it, I'm going to make that my home first.
Yeah.
My home and my body,
Mm.
in my own body.
Mm.
So that practice of savoring food is a beautiful way, just like noticing how touch feels to us is a beautiful way of releasing or working with some of the edges of hypervigilance in our body.
Mm.
But also just noticing like, oh, when I sit in this chair, how does it feel
Mm.
if I really sink in? And then we're like, God, why do I still have this chair? I don't even like this chair. It doesn't feel good. It looks pretty,
Yeah.
but it doesn't actually feel good.
Mm.
Um,
That is actually kind of true of these chairs.
I like it. My arms are like,
it's not the most uncomfortable podcasting chair, but they also look very cool. They're not the most, but what's interesting, the most comfortable doesn't always look the best with posture.
Yeah. So I think what it is we take things out of the realm of how they look or how we think they should give to us. And we start noticing how things feel.
Mm.
And that can be very simple. Like I really love doing interior design for myself and with people just organically and playfully. And I'm also like, I grew up poor. So I really have a kink for doing things on like a budget. But I'll often notice like, what is one piece? What is one thing that I'm like, when I'm around that thing in my house, I just feel something settle in me. I just feel something open. Like feels good.
Yeah.
I have this piece of art in my mind that's like a really old, tattered painting of Ganesha
Mm.
in my house. And every time I look at it, I'm like, it's like I feel all the wisdom of my ancestors with me. I don't know. I could make words, but it's a feeling in my body when I'm around that piece. And then we just start to actually gather and orient more towards those things. We probably all have a thing. It could be a plant in your space.
Mm.
Just orienting to those beings, because I think they are beings,
Mm.
you know, the flower, the picture,
Yeah.
the pair of socks.
Yeah. And the plants speak to each other.
Yeah.
Your house plants speak to each other.
I mean, we're in relationship with everything all the time. Starting to orient to the things that really feel good, not mentally, but to our bodies. Wear those socks more, those socks that feel good.
Mm.
Put that oil on your skin a little more because you noticed how it felt. You know, move the plant beside the bed, even though it looks great in the living room, because like I actually just, so that intuitive, just starting to track and notice how the things in our environment make us feel, which will also have us notice the things that we're like,
Mm.
I don't want this in my space anymore. I don't actually, why do I wear these things because when in 1992, somebody told me I was a winter. And so I only wear these colors, but like, I just want to wear terracotta, damn it. I actually like the linen. It feels good, even though my mom told me I looked like a grandma. I don't care, you know? So we just start to like be in the sensual experience of life.
Yeah.
And in orienting towards what makes us feel good, even though we don't quite need to understand it, we are co-regulating with things in our environment, and we are creating anchors of safety and belonging in our own space.
Mm.
And then there's the beings of our space, and that's like a whole other world of exploration. But are there gaps in connection, intimacy, care, reciprocity with the beings that we share our home spaces with?
Mm.
And how might we then turn towards and see what wants to happen there?
Mm.
Do the work of orienting and relating in a good way, in a truer way with the beings in our space. In my case, that has meant divorce and separation. It has meant noticing my own blocks of intimacy with my own children, and where I get busy instead of sink in at times. And all of those things have been working my edges of hypervigilance and creating more of a sanctuary space for me, but sensual pleasure. Not because so-and-so said that was a great incense, but because when I burn it, I feel something. And not because like pampas grass is all the rage on Pinterest right now, but because I like a juicy monstera.
I don't know what you just said.
Yeah, no, but like forget about the optics of it and notice how a thing makes us feel.
Yes.
You know, and that is part of how we start weaving sanctuary in our space and being in relationship with our home, even if it's like a trailer or a 1-bedroom apartment that has stucco on the ceiling that you don't like, you know, but this starting to create more of a sensually rich environment for us to be in, one that is fine-tuned to our body, our taste, not the taste in my mind, but the actual flavor. Yum. I want to lick this place.
If you want the most outrageously orgasmic pussy, if you want to have the most exquisite and luscious sexual experiences of your entire life, the most effective tool for this is called the crystal egg. This is a crystal that you pop up your pussy, and essentially you do a type of yoga with it, meaning you learn different breathwork practices, different strength building exercises, and different ways to use your sexual energy that enhance sensitivity, pleasure, and your sexual magnetism. This is my absolute favorite practice. It transformed my sexuality, and I'm so excited to share it with you. I teach it in a program called Crystal Pleasure. This is a 6-week-long training that gives you everything you need to know about this amazing tool so that you can have the most exquisite sexual experiences. You can sign up for this program by heading over to laylamartin.com/crystal pleasure. And what's fascinating to me is what you're talking about. I do this because I love it because it feels good to me. That reads as style. That actually, like on you, that becomes a style, a way of living, a way of operating in the world. And it feels like style because you're not just trying to show something, you're doing something that feels relational to you.
Yes.
I love this pair of jewelry. I love this thing this incense that I'm burning, which is really powerful.
Yes.
So something I'd love to ask for our female leaders out there is one of the things that I noticed is that we get stuck in a broken cycle where when you feel safe, you will start to feel erotic, right? Your erotic power, when your body feels safe, it's like, let's have pleasure, let's have play, let's have connection, let's have fun. And most of us, it's still very coded that erotic is unsafe. So what I find is that virtuous upward spiral, if you will, of I feel safer and I get more erotic, and then I feel more powerful, and then I get safer and then I get more erotic, and then I feel more powerful, right? And this like rebuilds.
Because by the way, power is nature.
Yeah. And nature is erotic.
Not domination in a domination suppression cycle. Power is nature. Watch us stop motion of a plant growing and we will be blown away by the power and beauty of nature. So yes, this
that's
is
you.
why
That's happening all the time.
Eros, which is the life force moving and flowing through us, because we are beginning because more and more we are knowing ourselves as nature, that we feel more powerful.
Yeah.
Because that's what nature is. So yes.
So you're, let's say I am on board intellectually with the premise that my erotic power is going to help me become a more powerful leader.
Yes.
But there's still deep conditioning of fear around unlocking that erotic nature. How do you work with someone, or what would you say to someone that this intellectually sounds good, but on a somatic level, it's not been fully realized yet?
That it's a journey. It's a journey. And that sometimes the picture that we have in our head of what is 10 steps ahead is very different than what 10 steps ahead is. I was in a very unsexual, unerotic relationship for a long time with my kid's dad. And if somebody really was speaking to me about erotic power and leadership, the picture that I might have made is like a very hypersexualized expression where, I don't know, there's like boundarylessness or almost like a caricature, like a hypersexualized caricature of myself. And
this is coming up a lot lately, even in my work, because that is either leaky sexual energy, which means I actually haven't connected my Eros and my heart. So my Eros has nowhere to go and it shoots out. And that's what looks to us like, oh, this person's spraying sexual energy all over the place, but it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Or that I haven't done the foundational work of loving myself enough and knowing my own worth enough, which you don't have to be perfect at that. Yeah. I've done enough. If enough of that isn't there, as soon as I gain some of my erotic power back, I'm going to try and use it to hook people's
Manipulate. Yeah.
attention or have them show me that I'm worthy or have them tell me that I'm loved because I don't fundamentally feel that for myself. So I just thank you for articulating this because I think almost everybody's head goes there.
Yes.
Like you say erotic leadership and like I'm thinking that I have to wear lingerie on Instagram.
Yeah.
Which you totally can if you want to, if that's the thing that makes you feel good. And there are people wearing lingerie on Instagram that are doing it because their sexuality isn't connected to their heart.
Yeah.
And the only way that they currently know how to express sexuality through their body is down and out. Mm-hmm. And look at me rather than up and in. And this is my radiant, glorious, activated force of nature being. And so it's really beautiful to articulate that, not to shame anyone because nothing is bad, but we do know it when we see it. And to know that that is actually not channeled erotic force.
Yeah.
That people who have channeled erotic force, it feels like you're a force of nature because you've actually harnessed the power of nature within you.
Yes. So I would say that it's a journey and also it's a journey of walking truth. It's a journey of moving as truth, which is going to be unique for everyone. And so if it is my truth to express in that way, then I guess that's what will feel true.
Yeah.
And it will feel true because it feels more safe in that moment because there's capacity for that. It doesn't feel true now because there isn't safety and capacity for that. And maybe it's not for me.
Yeah.
And I don't have to know that now.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing I would say is that as I've allowed Eros to move through me more and seen firsthand through this body how that is shaping my leadership.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I wear flowy linen from head to toe with, medicine necklaces and no makeup and frizzy wild hair and a bun that I didn't look at the mirror in, and also dresses and eyeliner and also sometimes a really expensive leather bra over a mesh shirt. But I'm not one note.
Yeah.
I feel as erotically alive in linen that literally goes from my neck to my ankle as I do in that bra. Different flavors, but still fully erotically alive, fully in my greatest current capacity for leadership. And so that process, if we talk about it, if we think about it more as thawing, more as returning home to me, and less as a pushing outward of energy or a projecting outward of confidence. I think that sometimes in leadership, we focus on the projection out. I want to build my confidence so that I can radiate confidence. I want to radiate magnetism. I want to radiate clarity and power and certainty. And I'm like, cool, let's fully come home here.
Yeah.
Ever more all the way. So the building of our erotic capacity to me can even be in the moment of me putting oil or lotion on my body. And instead of slapping it on, which is fine, but I decide in the moment that I'm actually just going to feel what that arm is feeling like to be rubbed with this. It can be in the moment where I am about to have a conversation and I feel all this pent up energy in my body. And I'm like, I think I just need to cry for a minute and just let myself sit on the floor and fall apart and have a little snotty cry for 5 minutes. This is how we actually build our erotic leadership. So I'm not talking about the picture of it. I'm talking about the thawing out, the coming home, the returning home, and how over time that builds capacity, that builds a power that moves up and out through us instead of something that we're forcing forward. That builds confidence, that it builds empowerment in a very rooted way, just like the client with the green beans who's savoring, and the real sense of confidence and empowerment wasn't because she had mastered dominating herself into following the rules correctly. But the real sense of empowerment and confidence came from I can actually trust this body.
Mm.
I can actually trust my cravings when I get more intimate with my body, when I savor. So simple.
Mm.
Enjoy this one bite in my mouth. Like that process of one bite at a time, to me, is how we build our leadership.
Mm.
Mhm.
And I think the subtle field that you can feel in people, let's again just use lingerie posts on Instagram because I'm just gonna really circle around that one today. Is that when it's coming as an act of truth and because it feels like the best thing for me, it feels like an offering.
Yeah.
And you receive it as an offering. You're like, oh, wow, like this is a blessing, or this is art, or this is erotically activating. It feels like a blessing.
Mhm.
And I don't think that sometimes we're as aware that other people can perceive the motivation and energy behind what we're doing
100%.
as much as they do, that humans actually are attuned to that.
Mhm.
And that you can make the same post and people can either feel this is trying to get my attention, this is trying to get something from me, or you posted this so that I will have a response to you, versus I posted this as an offering to pleasure, to beauty, to the world, to be inspired, to feel a certain way.
Mhm.
There's a very subtle difference, and yet people feel it. And I think that's really fascinating in terms of leadership as well. Like people feel the why behind why you took the microphone,
Yeah.
why you took the stage.
And it's not about being nice.
Mm.
It's not about being palatable, legible, pleasable.
Mm.
It is the actual movement of truth
Yeah.
through us.
Yeah.
Truth as we know it. Truth with words, without words. And if the goal is that we are building a world where that sensitivity that we are born with, that precious sensitivity, is safeguarded,
Mm.
is made sanctuary is built around, so that that sensitivity can bloom and expand, so that the gifts of that child can shine forward and can contribute to the fabric of community and therefore the fabric of our world. If that's the world that we want to build, then we have to want for ourselves and each other to be attuned beings.
Mm.
And therefore, me posing and posturing and projecting and convincing on the internet, I've got to know that there are a bunch of people that can sniff that shit out.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
And so that leads us to only one conclusion. There's only one place to go, which is embodying my own deep sensitivity,
Yeah.
which is actually coming into deep relationship with myself, which to me is the erotic innocence of life.
Mm.
Like, here's a controversial but absolutely true thing to say, which are children are erotic beings.
Mm.
There is an erotic innocence. For me, there was something powerful in claiming myself as I became a single mom when my kids' dad and I separated. And so when I'm parenting alone, which is hard. It's like all my edges, there's no tapping out. I've got two little boys that are just like asking me wildly different things at the same time and talking over each other and fighting. And I would be like, the real unlock for me in that was I am an erotic being here too.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean I'm freaking doing inappropriate things. Like that would never have me doing an inappropriate thing. Actually, it would protect me from, and I have a whole rant that I could go on about why the dominating powers, suppressive powers would really want mothers to not experience ourselves as erotic beings.
Yeah.
Because watch out, world. If mothers know themselves as erotic beings, we will burn down anything that isn't protective of our children.
Mm.
And we will radically contribute to the building of a world that is.
Mm.
And so knowing myself.
Well, here's us really being a stand for more and more erotically activated mothers.
Yeah.
Not just a stand for, but cultivating that.
So watching myself in the moment where the kids are kind of, and I'm getting more and more tight, and I'm getting more and more agitated, and I'm getting more and more, I want out of here, and more like I need something to numb me out.
Mm.
And instead practiced being like, okay, everybody, 1 minute. This is a lot. Mama's having a big moment. I'm going to put a record on and let's dance, or let's crawl around like little animal. What's your animal? What's your animal? Okay, mommy is hungry tiger. We're going to crawl around for a minute. Like, I couldn't hack my way into those parenting hacks because they were emergent, but they were emergent because instead of going, a good mom would right now just say, oh, thank you for letting me know, honey. Okay, I will be right with you. Yes, mommy's just going to cook dinner. Anyway, and swallow it. Instead, I was like, I get to be here too. And I'm not going to be here by being like, shut up, because, or like, my needs are the only needs that matter right now. But actually, in claiming myself as an erotic mother means I want to be thawed out. And currently I'm getting more and more hard, icy, constricted, suppressed. And I want to bring my lushness to this moment. My lushness, which isn't always nice and sweet, but I got to get my body back online. And so the wisdom of like, let's crawl around, everybody, or let's have a dance party, everybody, or let me light an incense because I want to infuse the space with something that really does something good for my nervous system, And I tend me, not just them, I tend me in this sensual, creative way. I'm a better mom. I'm leading actually in that moment. And I'm not performing and I'm not faking it. And so just more of that, like it can happen in these every moments when we're committed to, I get to have sanctuary, and also let me thaw what is frozen right now to the best of my ability in the most creative ways that I can conceive of.
Yes. You're a guy and you want to be able to separate orgasm and ejaculation. If you want to be able to last as long as you desire, if you want to be multi-orgasmic, but more than anything else, you want to know that you are a masterful lover who can give extraordinary sexual pleasure and gifts to your beloved, then I have created a 6-week training called Men's Sexual Mastery. And this training will take you through beginner, intermediate, and advanced sexual practices so that you can learn all of the foundational skills like breath work, sexual meditations, pelvic floor exercises that will enable you to have all of these sexual skills and also train you in the presence and emotional healing to be able to be an extraordinary lover of deep power and deep connection. If you are interested in joining this program, you can head on over to laylamartin.com/men's sexual mastery. Yes. All right. Let's finish with one final piece, which is you've really come forward with what you call, I'm paraphrasing here, but like an erotic reclamation in middle age.
Yes.
Which really, if we're going to put it in plain language, means that, as you mentioned, you were in a non-sexual marriage for a fairly long period of time. And you've got 2 children and you divorced, and we got told by society that is the end of a woman's sexual and erotic power. Yeah. And you found, which actually I find this to be true across the board. Like my friends in this position are like, holy shit, it's better than ever. It's more amazing. What was your erotic reclamation journey with that?
Well, I will say this first. There was a night where, and we've maybe had some of us a handful of these moments in life, but where it's really precious and potent and you're like, okay, something big is happening here. So my kid's dad and I had separated. I was falling asleep and I was in that sort of between sleep and wake liminal space. And I saw this image of a pathway, and then there was a fork in the road, and there were 2 paths. And one path was the path of the open heart.
Mm.
And the other path was the path of bitterness and resentment.
Mm.
And actually, the way that it was presented to me was that my mother was at the end of the path of the open heart. My father was at the end of the path of bitterness and resentment,
Mm.
which kind of tracks for how they lived their lives after they divorced,
Mm.
which was a defining moment in my life as a child.
Mm.
And I heard this voice, this great she. And she said, "Which path do you choose?" And I was like, "Well, duh, I choose the path of the open heart." And she said, "Prove it." And I didn't know how. So I asked her, which is pro tip, what you do. Ask the great voice. I said, "How would you have me do that?"
Yeah.
And she said, "Get on a dating app." And I was like, "Any other options? May I have an alternative, please?" And she was like, "No." And so I was like, "Okay, I will get on a dating app tomorrow." And then I started to drift a little deeper into sleep, but I felt this part of me that was like, that knew.
And she's like, "No, right now."
Well, actually, it was my own
You were
will.
okay to do it the next morning. She's like, at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, I felt the presence of my own will, actually, that was like, I know what will happen tomorrow.
Yes.
I will wake up, the kids, the next thing,
Yeah.
It's a now.
Yeah.
And so I willed myself awake all the way. And I was like, I don't know, Hinge. And I got on and I just committed, like, I'm just going to be me. Like this, you're going to get me.
Yeah.
Not this like, but the open-hearted me, the full me. Pictures of me with no makeup, picture of me with makeup. I wasn't trying to perform anything. I was just like, here's full spectrum me.
Mm.
Looking for other decolonial dream weavers to, play in the magic space with and see what emerges. That was something like that was the opening line. And really shortly thereafter, I matched with my now beloved. And we just sort of recognized each other. And that's been such a journey. And so part of this reclamation of my erotic beingness, the truth that I am an erotic being, the truth, in other words, that I am nature, has been through the journey of relationship, but also through the journey of relationship with me.
Mm.
And it started with choosing the path of the open heart instead of the path of bitterness, which is a big part of it. Because nature is love, that I know to be true. And so if I want to know myself as nature, I better choose the path of the open heart, which is treacherous and beautiful. And a real commitment to being thawed and raw and wide and open. And it's been clunky and crunchy and beautiful and awakening. And I will say this, I think that it's a really great trick to convince women that at midlife, they are becoming less relevant, less potent, less attractive, less interesting, less intelligent, and that we should soothe this pain with either a hyperfixation on youth, being more like a maiden in all the ways, or just this sort of collapsed descent into irrelevance, and that the best allies we have are wine and reality TV and bullshit small talk with other women, because of course we also have the story that like it's very hard to make friends past a certain age. So give up, Susan, is basically the narrative. Let go, Susan. And I'm like, what a great trick. Because actually what's happening in midlife is hormones start shifting, estrogen starts decreasing. And as estrogen decreases, our attention goes from less from caretaking in the here and now to like big vision, the world, the collective, the community, all of this heat is rising in our bodies. All of a sudden, people talk about perimenopausal rage and perimenopausal anxiety and, just all of this intensity. And we think that intensity is like this fragility. We're breaking, the wheels are falling off, we're coming undone. It's so hideous. Oh my God, the wrinkles, the sags, the bags, the uncontrollable emotions. And I'm like, whoa, there is so much power cracking through us, quaking through us, if we knew it as power. And then we actually allowed that power to roar through us. I actually think the real thing that is happening at midlife is we're waking up and shaking up systems and structures of harm, that we're actually like gathering ourselves together because now we understand that we need community. It is indisputable. And so we link arms instead of trying to be especially special and do it all on ourselves. And I'm like, maybe actually midlife is the moment where we decide we're going to really fuck shit up and reorder this world. From the inside out, from our closest relationships to our broader communities, all the way out through the world.
And have really epic sex and so many orgasms along the way.
Yes, unleashed. Because the other thing that happens, I'm sorry, there's a lot of language in this podcast, but the other thing that happens is that estrogen decreases, is there are fewer fucks. We all know this, right? I just care less what you think of me. Great. That's a great thing. Let's roll with that. So much care, so little performance.
Yes. Yay, Nisha Moodley!
Layla Martin.
Thank you for such a fantastic talk. It's been so incredible.
It's been so good.
We'll include all of the links to your Instagram, your website, all of that. So please go ahead and find that to connect with Nisha, to stay in touch. And I love you so much.
I love you. I love you. Crush is mutual.
Thank you for listening to this Tantric Life. I am Layla Martin. This is the home for the realest conversations about sex, spirituality, polarity, conscious relationships, and all kinds of topics that help us live the absolute most incredible lives. Please check out the next episode. Please go ahead and leave your rating and review on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. It's so helpful when you do that. If you want to stay connected to me, the most helpful supportive thing you can do is to head over to laylamartin.com, sign up with your email address. That connects you to me if you want to study deeper with me, if you want to receive my deeper teachings. I do it predominantly via email. Finally, you can check me out on Instagram at @TheLaylaMartin. And thank you so much for being here.